Hello, welcome to Maltbox, the non-chill filtered whisky blog. I'm Andy and this is Whisky Review number 62. It's also the fourth and final part in the 4th of July mini-series that I've been doing, where I've been looking at 4 different American whiskies. The last of which is this little beauty. And that is the Four Roses single barrel, or one of the varying batches of. Okay, now I've already looked at the got that right, work. I've already looked at the Four Roses small batch quite a few reviews ago, and the single barrel is kind of a bit of a, it's very different actually. I'm not going to say it's a step up, it's very different whisky to that one. As it sounds, it is a single barrel type release. This particular batch is batch 376N, warehouse number EN. That's not a number, but I'll let it slide. Bottled at 50%. It is a Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey because Four Roses Distillery is based in Kentucky. It is a straight bourbon whiskey, as I say, therefore it has not got any colouring in there, which is good. 50%, quite chunky. Really nice sort of like rich amber colour in there. Wow, very slow legs indeed. Some still forming on the bands at the top, don't know if you can see, probably not from there. They're not even going down yet. It's sticking to the glass. You see that? No, you probably can't see that, can you? Sorry about that. You might, if you do. Brilliant. Without further ado, onto the nose. So I'm going to try it full strength, just a little nip, and then I'm going to water it down. It's 50%, pretty, you know, it's a pretty chunky percentage. Interestingly, it's very, very tight, very closed. It will open up with water once I put the water in. Initially I'm just getting a really kind of deep star anise, clove kind of note in there. Toffee, a little bit of spice. And not a right lot else. It's almost dusty in a way, it does smell a little bit dusty. And that's not due to the bottle. But this is quite a recent purchase, I might add. I've had a few of these versions before, obviously different batches. When I ran the Manchester Whisky Club, this is one of the bourbons that I brought to the first American night we did, got back in 2013, and it went down an absolute storm. It was the favourite whisky of the night for a lot of people. You can pick it up relatively easily, and not in shops. You know, you're not going to find it in the UK in particular, you're not going to find it in Tesco or Asda and that. It's going to be Master and Malt Whisky Exchange. I picked this one up on Amazon, a bit like I did with, can't remember what it was that I said the other day that I bought, the Maker's Mark. This was also on offer. It usually retails for about £35 to £40. This was on Amazon for £27.50, so I snapped it up straight away because that is a bargain for this whisky. It then went up to $29.99, which is still cheap. I mean, Amazon is worth checking out now as a whisky retailer. They're really up in the game in terms of pricing, although it can vary quite a lot. I do tend to try and stick where I can to my local retailers in Manchester, like Aston's in Manchester, or Master and Malt online or Whisky Exchange, where I can. However, for that price, can't turn it down. Going back to it now without water still. A little bit more to it now, but only very slightly, in the sense I'm getting a little bit of pepper and some sherbet, lemon sherbet. So on the palate, I'm not going to take in too much of this because I don't want to burn my palate out before I water it down. At this strength, it is worryingly drinkable. You can tell it's strong, and it's still got quite a peppery heat kick towards the finish. Just after you put it onto the palate, smooths out towards the finish, and there it is. Lots of, oddly, chamomile tea. That's really weird. Toffee, I've already mentioned sort of star anise, clove and spice. Totally getting that. Again, looping back around again. Toffee, once more. It's come around for a second bout. Going into the finish now, actually a little bit of chocolate. Sort of more milk chocolate than dark chocolate, I'd say. Finish is quite long, quite warm, quite sweet, vanilla sweetness now. That is the first time the vanilla's cropped up. So I'm going to try it with a few teaspoons of water. Two and a half. And a little bit more. There we go. Even a drop can make a difference when it comes to whiskey, I can assure you. So, as I say, you can pick this up relatively easily online at your usual suspects. It's a really nice bottle actually. You know, the Four Roses stuff tends to be quite pleasing to the eye anyway, yellow label aside. And mentioning the yellow label, actually that is the basic entry level Four Roses. Generally speaking, I have used it in the past, but I've only used it in cocktails because I don't find it a very good sipping bourbon myself. The yellow label's very, very, very much on the front end of sweet and not a right lot else, but it's great in cocktails, very affordable as well, for about £17. You've then got small batch, onto single barrel, and I believe there are a few other releases as well, although, you know, the US market will get the fair share of the bottlings there. So it's bottled at 50%, the small batch is 46, so whilst it's not necessarily what you might describe as being a true pure single cask release where they'll keep it at cask strength of 60% or 50%, you know, 50% still pretty chunky. Don't get me wrong, it's not something you want to be drinking too much of in one sitting. Four Roses Distillery is based in Lawrenceburg, Kentucky, so a bit akin to the Buffalo Trace. You know, being in Kentucky and Maker's Mark, that is heartland of bourbon. You know, that is where some of the best and most famous bourbon distilleries are. They really know what they're doing. So now let's have a little bit of time to open up. Let's see what it's got on the nose this time with a bit of water in there. Yes, you've got your toffee, yes, you've got your spices. Think now I'm also getting cardamom pods as well as the star anise and the clove. Got a little bit of vanilla in there, you've still got a tiny little nip of that sherbet, not too much. But what I'm actually getting is something quite savoury, and I'm thinking paprika. Only a slight wisp. But for me it is there, a very savoury spice, herb kind of note in there. I mean, the vanilla does come out a little bit more as you go on, but already I can tell it's not a very overly sweet. As I mentioned, I think with the Jack Daniels, what did I say? It was clunky, maybe. I might have been the Maker's Mark, I can't remember. It's certainly not like that. It actually seems quite refined. That's what I will say about it. It's a very, very well made bourbon. There's actually also plums, stewed plums. I hate the phrase stewed fruits in whiskey reviews, but there we go. I'm not going to say stewed fruits, I'm going to say stewed plums. Technicality there for you. Oh, definitely. Yeah, it's really, really nice alongside that toffee and the vanilla, sort of like it's coming out towards the end there. Right, let's try it on the palate now. Okay. You've got the plums again. You've got this lovely sort of toffee, plum and sort of vanilla interplay there. You've got a little bit of what tastes like, you know, the canned whipped cream, the sweet stuff that you can just spray in your mouth. A little bit of that, but not too much, thankfully. It is almost, sorry, in its own way, it's quite creamy. Kind of what I mentioned along, if you imagine that whipping cream alongside that plum and the vanilla, it's really nice. Cinnamon, nutmeg, you've got the clove, you've got a tiny little bit of the cardamom. It's not quite lending itself on the savoury side of things on the palate as much as it did on the nose with that paprika that I mentioned. The finish is slightly shorter, however it's still there and it's still sweet. It's pretty much, that's it. There's not really much else. You've got a kind of plummy note going through to the end. There's a beer that is made by Titanic Brewery in the UK called Plum Porter. If you have tried it, you'll know what I'm talking about because it's a delicious beer. If you've not, I recommend you try and get yourself a bottle or some on cask where you see it. There's definitely a hint of that in there. So just nice rich porter beer. So porter's almost like a stout, a bit lighter. It generally has a few more sort of like coffee, licoricey, savoury notes. But they make it with plum essence or plum extracts in it. Oh my god, it tastes phenomenal. Intertwining of plum flavour, and that is what I'm kind of experiencing here a little. And it really does remind me of it in some ways. Obviously, I appreciate it's an American bourbon. It's 50%, and it is not a porter brewed in Stoke-on-Trent. However, you know, comparisons, it's context. That's what it's all about. On the nose now, apart from what else I've mentioned, the sherbet's come back. There's also a little bit of icing sugar in there as well, so quite high, what you might describe as being high sweet rather than a low, rich, deep sweetness like a muscovado sugar or molasses or something like that. It's very sort of thin sweet. That's the way I can describe it. Vanilla now, pastry, got just really nice rich spiciness, sweetness intertwined. Finish, again, there's a little bit of heat on it this time. It's really nice sort of soft warmth that plays right till the end, and just that kind of sweet flavours from the palate basically playing it off. That's it. Just going back to what I said about the high sweetness and low sweetness, please, that's not actual phrase, that is something that came off the top of my head. I'm really hoping that it doesn't become a thing because it sounds ridiculous. In terms of the whiskey, really well put together bourbon. Some really good spirit goes into these single barrel releases, and I do recommend that you at least try it where you can. Generally I picked it up, as I say, for 27 or 20 odd quid. You're normally looking at 35 to 40 for this, on the higher end usually, so sort of 37, 38. However, you can get it cheaper. Well worth the money in my opinion. Great whiskey. In terms of scores, I'm going to give this an 86 out of 100. Very well put together, as I say. Really nice sort of sweet contrasting flavours. However, it's not overpowering, it's just very refined, and I think refinement is something that is often lacking in certain bourbons. And I'm not saying it applies to all bourbons, it applies to Scotch as well. I mean, let's face it. But you know, a lot of bourbon is quite young. I appreciate the maturation is slightly different over there, and the processing involved is slightly different. However, I think it really does play well with this particular release. It also makes a really nice sort of decanter after you've emptied it, or something you can stick some flowers in if you can get away with it. I mean, I'm not quite convinced the missus to let me put flowers in these whiskey bottles yet, but we'll see how that goes. It worked at the wedding, that's what we did for the wedding, so I might be able to get it around the house now, we'll see. So on that note, thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this 4-bottle mini-series. You know, I mean, if you are watching from America, I hope you had a great 4th of July. And to the rest of you, See you soon.